Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I am excited to be here today. I'm going to be talking about this wonderful idea called disagree and commit. The idea some of you may have been seen as one of the leadership principles that was developed by Jeff Bezos at Amazon, one of the 14 leadership principles. But it goes all the way back to Andy Grove at Intel and other tech leaders like Scott McNealy at Sun Microsystems. And the idea is to disagree and commit across the organization, but especially in your leadership team. Because when you get a group of people together who are super smart, super motivated, it is inevitable that people are going to disagree. So the reason I want to talk about this today is that when we disagree, how do we disagree? Have we thought through how do we actually create an environment as disruptors? How do we get all these different disruptors aligned in the same place to be fighting as hard as possible for the solution they are really believe in? And yet at the same time, at the end, come back together and commit to the one course of action going forward. So one of the biggest problems I see in organizations that are trying to be more disruptive, to try to grow faster, is that there is this sense that, well, we really can't say what's on our minds. We have to be able to agree on everything. We have to come to a consensus in order to move forward. And for those of you who have ever tried to get everybody to agree on something, you end up having to compromise a lot. And in the end, what you do by trying to create consensus and make sure that everyone is at least somewhat happy is you have such a watered down approach. You have such a safe approach that it's not a great solution. So what I have found in disruptive organizations is that they do this really well. They disagree extremely well. And this is something I want to encourage you to take a look at in your organization. How do you disagree? How do you actually make sure that everyone feels safe and feels comfortable disagreeing? So I would like to welcome anybody who's listening to just chime in, tell me where you're coming from, and give me an idea of how hard it is, how easy is it for you to be able to have these kinds of discussions in your organization with your leadership team. Do you disagree well? And also, do you make sure that people at the end of the discussion, once decisions are made, that you are committing 100%, that everyone is committed to the path forward? So one of the things I want to talk about is how do you actually do this? What is the idea behind disagree and commit? Well, let's take this apart. This is two very key ideas. One is about disagreeing and one committing. The disagree part, first of all, is that when you are making a decision, and especially so when you're making a tough, really difficult decision, then you want everybody's best ideas to come forward. And so you want people to develop them, really believe in that idea, in the solution, and then bring it to the table. If you ever have to worry about, well, maybe Joe over here or Mary over there may not like this idea. I've had discussions with them and they really don't like this idea, but I fundamentally believe this is the path forward. You would still bring it forward because you would know with the greatest respect that Joe and Mary are going to put their solutions on the table as well, and that they will be the best solutions that they can come up with. So this is the key thing. Everyone on your team needs to come forward with the best solution possible. And you're not doing this to spite anybody, but you're doing this because you're all aligned on this great purpose, this mission, this need that you're trying to solve, this problem you're trying to solve. So one of the key questions then becomes, what kind of relationship do you have with people? Is it strong enough that when you get into the room, you can actually disagree and you're okay with it? Because it's not personal at that point. The personal happens outside of the room and you're learning how to have that relationship. And no problem, no foul, we're just going to go in there and fight for our ideas. But when we come out, we're going to set those aside. We're still on the same team. If you believe that everyone is fully aligned and fully committed to the thing you're trying to accomplish, then you know the intentions are right. So this is where you can get the best solutions as a leader. If you are really encouraging your team members to come forward with the best ideas possible. Now, the hard part is if you as a leader just fundamentally don't like what everyone else in the team is coming up with, and you have your own idea that you want to move forward with. This is such a dangerous place, precarious place for leaders, because if you are listening and giving people the ability to disagree with you, and you're putting your ideas forward just because, and you're going to move forward just because you're the leader, without fully explaining and listening to everyone else's, you're not going to have that level of trust with everyone. Jeff Bezos has a great example he wrote in a shareholder letter. He was sharing the example that his team, especially the Amazon Studios team, had come to him and said, hey, we've got this great idea. We want to move forward with it. And he hated the idea, absolutely hated the idea, argued about all the reasons why it wouldn't be good. But then he took a step back and he realized, I put together the best team possible. They are Academy Award winners. They've won Emmys. They are steeped in how Hollywood works. They understand consumers, the viewerships. Who am I to know? I completely disagree with this approach. So he went back to them and said, I think this is absolutely the wrong thing to do. I completely disagree, but I think we're going to move forward with your idea. I'm going to be 100% committed to this idea. And now you know that I am going to make sure that this idea succeeds. So it takes a really strong leader. It takes really strong leaders in the room to be able to come to an agreement, not because you're all in agreement with the right idea, but because the decision-making process you have agreed to results in an idea that may not be yours. And the commit part is just as important, because when you walk out of that room, no matter whose idea is, you walk into that room 100% committed that you're going to back the idea that may or may not be yours. Because unless you know you have that commitment, everyone's going to be constantly second guessing. Well, I know that Joe and Mary didn't like my idea, but because my idea got picked, are they going to sandbag me? Are they going to just sit back and just hope that this idea doesn't work? And I love how Andy Grove talks about this. He said that basically when people disagree, you're actually going to be committed even more so to make sure that the idea works, that it's the execution isn't the reason why the idea fails. He has this great quote. If you disagree with an idea, you should work especially hard to implement it well, because that way, when it fails, you'll know it was a bad idea, not bad execution. Because you don't want to second guess and say, well, maybe we just didn't do it right because the other team members weren't 100% committed. If everybody's 100% committed, then we know the idea didn't work because of the idea, it wasn't right time or whatever. Then you can go back and really examine what went wrong in our decision-making process. Maybe we take a different approach the next time. But you never want to be someone to be able to say, well, the idea didn't work because the team wasn't 100% behind it. So this is a really simple idea and an incredibly difficult one. How do you create an environment inside of your team so that everyone feels that they can disagree and disagree vehemently with all the passion that they bring to their jobs, but then turn around and be 100% committed? If you're a leader in a team where you're having a lot of these problems, driving consensus and agreement and everyone having to feel great about coming out, then the key thing to do is to focus not on the agreement to making sure that people feel good, but making sure that you feel good because you're going to be accomplishing your purpose and your mission. Aligning around that constantly, saying, this is what we're fighting for. Are we right, everybody? We're all here to make this happen. Then you can begin the meeting knowing that everyone is committed to that. So I want to go and turn to some of the questions and comments from people and just welcome them. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Welcome, Julius from Canada, Oscar from Monterrey, Mexico. Great to have you here. Timothy, thank you for joining from Malaysia. Great to see you early in the morning there. And Susie from Miami, too. Julius, you have a great comment here. Disagreement is fine. You always have disagreements. It's just how you process it afterwards. And this is a really great thing because I was working with one organization, a group of leaders, where they had respect as one of their core values, which is a great value. But they took it as respect for other people in the room mean that you couldn't disagree to them face to face in a group setting. And it just felt like they had such a thin skin that people did not feel safe, could not feel safe either taking in disagreements or even offering disagreements. And so they had to work really hard for almost a year just on reframing that value so that people could disagree in a really respectful way with full respect for the common cause that they were united in, to be able to change that culture. I'm hearing from LinkedIn, somebody from Boston. You're a graduate student, and you find it very difficult to work in a team with people who have different perspectives. But sometimes you have to give up yours and try to stick to one. I think this is almost the most difficult thing, that if you are on a team and your idea isn't the one that was picked, or you fundamentally disagree with the approach, you have two choices. You either get on the team and proceed, even though you just think it's the wrong direction and your gut, this is the wrong thing. You hope maybe it could still be the right thing to do. I'm going to be the good team member and make it work. But I think after some time, you may be wondering, I just completely disagree with the way this thing is going. Or more importantly, I feel like I'm not listened to, or it just fundamentally disagree with the underlying values that are being used to make these decisions. That's at the point where you really need to figure out, well, is this the right place for me? Because if I'm at such odds with the way things are being run, maybe this isn't the right place for me. And that's difficult to do and to say, especially in this environment right now, where there's so much uncertainty, so much chaos with the crises that are going on. This is the right time to be able to go and not. So that's a key thing to have to think about too as well. So we have some other people joining from Costa Rica. Hi, Jose. Thanks for joining from there. And we're just seeing some other great comments in here. Let's see. We also have Ken coming in from Santa Clara. I love Julia saying this. It's always being an open-minded leader. And a leader is about listening to your team. It's not always about being in front and being the leader. So being able to take in all these dissenting views, to frankly admit when you don't know what the answer is, or you don't think that you're necessarily right, or that maybe you're even wrong. These are things that are extremely valuable. I know from my own research, when I was researching my book, The Disruption Mindset, it surveyed 1,000 people and asked, what is the characteristic, what is the skill and the capability that you most value in a leader? And the number one result was honesty. We just want people to be honest when you do know something, when you don't know something, when you've made a mistake. Just be honest with me. Please don't hide behind a facade of being the perfect leader. All right, let's see what other comments we have here. We've also got some people coming in from British Columbia. Hi, Ed. Great. Thanks for joining. Donnie from Indonesia. Thank you also for coming and joining the broadcast. I want to just end with a couple other quick ideas. One of the key things here, the reason why we do things like have disagree, commit. The number one reason to adopt this idea as a principle, leadership principle, is that what you're essentially trying to do is to create trust. Again, leadership is simply a relationship between people who aspire to create change and the people who agree to follow them, are inspired to follow them. And that inspiration and that relationship can come only if you're building trust. And that is at the foundation of what disagree and commit is. It is a trust that I can walk into the room and I can put my ideas on the table, fight really hard for them, and I can trust my colleagues that it's going to be okay, that I fundamentally disagree with them, and that we will be able to get through all those disagreements, and at the end, we're going to still be 100% committed to each other. So the idea is that when you have trust, you're leaving nothing unsaid on the table. There's nothing that stands in the way. We have integrity with each other and integrity in our relationship so that nothing is left unsaid. And unless you have this philosophy and this value of disagreeing and commit, then you fundamentally aren't clearing the air, allowing people to have their say, and making the space for that to happen. The one thing I would say also is that there may be people where you're sensing that they're just not going to raise their hand. They're not going to have their say because they don't feel safe. And really take a look at the environment that you are creating. A big tip off to this is that you're coming in, there's a big decision to make, and everybody goes, yep, that's great. That's a good idea. Let's go. And nobody disagrees. Then you want to hold back your horses and say, like, wait a minute. We can't all be in 100% agreement. This is a really big decision. What are we not seeing here? What are we not thinking about? And really make that time and space, double check with everyone and see, are we truly ready to go forward with this? Are we truly in consensus? Or are there concerns that people have that they're not ready to talk about yet because they don't want to be seen as holding the team back, to being not the team player? The most dangerous time, the most important time to create that environment and to make sure people are disagreeing and committing is when nobody is disagreeing and everybody is agreeing. Because it's very rare when you get a group of really smart, really motivated, ambitious people trying to create disruption that everybody is in 100% agreement. So those are some key things to think about, is how do you create that space where people feel safe to disagree? And I would encourage you to really examine, do people really feel like they are included, that they feel belong, and that they feel safe to be able to raise your hand and disagree? And especially take a look at people who may be feeling that they don't feel as strongly in a place of belonging. I know that as a woman and as a person of color, there have been times when I'm the only person in a room of something. The only woman, the only young person, the only old person increasingly these days, the only person with a different kind of background without a coding degree or anything. So whatever that sense is, it's especially important to reach out to people who may not feel safe, who may feel marginalized and not as capable and safe to raise your hand and say, I disagree. It's your job as a leader to create that space, create that time and opportunity to be able to reach out to people who may not feel as comfortable disagreeing. Maybe you do this ahead of time. Maybe you do it in private. Maybe you even call them out in the room and say, Joe and Mary, you have had issues with this in our past conversations. What are you thinking at this point? So these are the times to be able to talk about those kinds of things, to be able to create that space as a leader for people to be able to disagree and commit. One of the key things that I would say, again, just I want to thank people for joining in today. As you are going through this and thinking about how to do things, I would love to hear more about how you are finding disagree and commit, how difficult it is. So please continue, even though the broadcast will be ending soon, please continue to add to the comments. I definitely go through all the comments even after the broadcast, and make sure that ask the questions about how do you do this? What are the difficult things that you're finding? What I'm feeling, the key issues that I'm hearing from people like Ed and Julius who have been commenting here is that this is such an important thing that in terms of your leadership practice, that you consider how you are creating that safe space again for people to disagree and commit. Thank you again for watching. My name is Charlene Lee. Hope that you enjoyed this broadcast. I also encourage you to come and check out some of the other broadcasts that I've been doing. I do these things twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays, and you can see some of the other broadcasts at this URL, charlenelee.com/events. Thank you again so much for joining, and thank you for watching this broadcast. Have a great day.